Hi and welcome to a new video in the series Study the Classics, this time episode 5, and we have a look at the game Karpov versus Unzicker, which is a very famous game. It was played in the Olympiad 1974 and many people know it just for a very typical motive. But I think the game should be known also for other things, and I think it's in general quite instructive from a strategic point of view. We will dive right into the game, which started with the Ruy Lopez, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castles h3, the classical main line, and back then black players often decided to play knight f5 and c5, which also happened in this game. So white took the center with d4. Black has several options here. He can in general choose between opening the center a little bit or keeping everything closed. In the game he chose to keep it closed and continued with queen c7 when white developed further with knight to d2, and after knight c6 white seized some space in the center with d5, which is very typical in those kind of Spanish positions because this gives white some kind of space advantage and also cuts the black pieces from the king side off from the queen side, and so in general if the queen side opens up, white is a bit stronger there. So black decided to play knight d8, which looks weird at first if you have never seen it, but it's also nowadays I think quite a common approach because sometimes they reroute the knights to g7 and f7, and despite black being quite passive, he is quite solid. In the game, white tried to open the queen side now with a4, which is a good move, and black defended with rook a8 because a takes b5 was the threat. White took and played b4, which is quite reasonable because the knight sometimes wants to jump to c5, and now the knight on b7 would be quite paralyzed. So I would think that the best would be to bring the knight to f7 later. However, in the game, black decided to bring the knight to b7 anyway, where it was out of play during the whole game. So the game continued, knight b7, knight f1, a very typical maneuver in the Spanish to reroute the knight to either e3 or g3, where it has some options to join the king side. So bishop d7, bishop e3, trying to get the a file with rook a8, and this will be quite an instructive moment. Who will win the a line here? Will it be black? Will it be white? Both are getting ready, but no one can immediately seize the a file because who takes first even loses the a line, and so everybody needs to wait, be patient, and wait for the best moment to do something there to double the rooks. But it's not easy. You cannot start doubling the rooks now. So we will have a look how the players did this. Queen d2, rook c8, bishop d3. There was the threat of taking here in the air, and maybe after this c2 is a target. Of course you need to take maybe first on a1, rook takes a1, and then take on b4, and then the pawn would be pinned. So white sidesteps with the bishop and black played g6, maybe having in mind some rerouting maneuver, which is quite common in the Spanish. White now started with knight g3 and then rook a2, finally getting ready to double the rooks on the a line. Because if black takes now, white can recapture with the queen, and black is not ready to challenge the a line immediately. So black decided to play pawn to c4, and white went with the bishop to b1, which looks kind of strange, but white wants to keep an eye on this pawn and also on a possible f5 push. However, it seems that this rook is now quite far from getting to a1 because it would take a lot of time to reroute the bishop. It cannot really go to c2, and yeah, it seems not so easy. And after queen d8, it's your choice. How can white solve this problem? How can white continue to fight for the a file in this position with this awkward bishop on b1? Can you find some idea for him? And we will continue with the solution, and I can tell you it's a very special solution because for many years the only thing I knew about this game was this maneuver, which is bishop a7, and it's very strong. White is closing the a file for now, but then getting ready to double the rooks behind, and at some moment, not sure when exactly, but at some moment he's already doubled on the a line and he can go back with the bishop and then seize the a line, because yeah, he has just doubled behind the bishop, and maybe he can even triple the pieces behind the bishop. So white is basically having the control when to open the a file, and that's a very, very nice motive. Also note, this only works because this knight is so badly placed. If this knight wouldn't be there but elsewhere, then the bishop could be attacked quite easily and we would need to retreat. But in this situation, the bishop just cannot be attacked in a very fast way. Maybe the fastest is something like queen c7 and then knight d8, but by that white could achieve other things. So we will have a look at how the game went, and black played knight to e8. Not sure what his intentions here are. Maybe he wants to bring knight to c7 over protecting this rook here. Yes, maybe. So white just followed his plan, doubling the rooks, queen e7, bishop b1 again, maybe preparing some actions with the queen, bishop e8, knight e2, knight d8. And here is another moment where you should challenge yourself and think about the position. Please pause the video if you want, and try to find a plan for white. How could he continue here? Are we ready to open the a file again, or is there something completely different we should do? And we will continue with the solution and what he did, and I think it's quite instructive. So in general in chess, one weakness is usually not enough, and this one weakness might be the a line. We cannot break through on the a file alone because he can neutralize it. Once we move the bishop back, he might take, we might recapture, but he might play rook a8 and kind of neutralizing all the pressure, and if the pressure is gone, then we have nothing to count on. So in such situations, you should not immediately try to capitalize on one advantage, but you should try to create a second weakness. And a second weakness can be created maybe on the king side, because now a lot of black's pieces are very passive and stuck on the queen side. So here's maybe just two pieces who can fight on the king side, and the way to open the king side is f4. And how can we get ready for this? A very typical plan is knight h2, then play f4, and then just come back and the f file is already opened. So that's exactly what he did, and I like this plan a lot. White is just trying to open, on the king side. Bishop g7, f4. Now you might wonder, am I not helping this bishop to gain more influence? Yes, you do, but the point is, this bishop is quite alone, and so it's not that dangerous. We can improve the knights and we control all the central squares, and this bishop alone cannot really be helped by any knight, because the knights, they can just not join, and they would love to go to e5, but therefore they would need f6, and then the bishop would be closed in. And also f5 is not really possible because it would open the position for us and would also just drop a pawn. So in general, this opening of the position would be nice for white. And so black decided to wait passively with f6, and white went f5. And here black probably did the final mistake, which was playing g5. Instead, he should just wait and try to keep his pawns on f6 and g6, covering those squares and not letting white in. However, after g5, he created some kind of hole here on h5 and also kind of killed this bishop forever. It will never come out again. This bishop could not really be worse. And from here, white found another very, very instructive plan. And it's up to you to find it too. If you want a hint, ask yourself the question, what is your worst place piece and what to do with it? And then you might find the solution. So white to move, how to improve the position. And we will continue with the solution, which is, yeah, this is our worst place piece. The bishop has really no more purpose on b1 because e4 doesn't need to be defended. We don't need to worry about any f5 pushes any longer, so the bishop has no job, and it's also quite closed in by the pawn chain. So what should we do with such a passive bishop? We should try to exchange it. And the way to do it is coming here and maybe trade it on h5. That should be the idea. Of course, black can try to prevent it, but in the game he didn't manage, and we will see how white executed this plan. Knight g3. Now bishop d1 is coming. If he wants to play something like h5, then I guess I would play bishop d1 anyway, and after h4 I can of course not come there with the bishop, but he created a hole on g4 which might be quite useful for us later. So I could imagine that maybe this is an interesting move, but maybe I also just retreat with the knight, play bishop g4, queen e2, and then try to trade the bishops. Or maybe also open the position with g3 later. So there are many plans, and also this would not question white's advantage. However, it might have been a better try. So knight b7 played, bishop d1, white traded the bishops, and first improved the rooks a little bit, finally brought in the knight with some tactical tricks. After takes, queen takes, there would be knight f6, and black would blunder the queen. So that's not possible. So black can just sit and wait, and white rerouted the knight, getting ready to jump to f5. Of course, the square is not available yet, but white is planning to even sacrifice a pawn and put a bishop to g6, and whenever it's taken, we get access to the f5 square. Okay, he didn't do this actually. I think it's another idea you could play, but he decided to take, and he did this motive later. Okay, same idea, opening the f5 square, and then the knights come in with great effect, because this bishop almost running out of squares and maybe even lost, because both knights might now attack it, and black will be forced to take at some point because white will just increase the pressure with knight h5, and if necessary even opening the queen side now. So now this bishop is really just waiting for the right moment. It's standing there already for a couple of moves, and white never really executed his threat, but black always needed to be ready. So let's see the finish. White jumped with knight h5, and black already resigned because there is mate threatened. There's also the threat of maybe taking there in case the queen goes somewhere, and also, yeah, maybe let's have a look. Why did he already resign? For me, queen f8 looks like a reasonable try, protecting both. So what could white do now? White could try to be just greedy and try to win some pawns, maybe knight g4, and then take and take a pawn, which is certainly not bad, I would say, but maybe there is already something better, like bishop to b6. My threat is simply to take everything. Take, and if the knight finally takes, I take d8, and the queen cannot take back because g7 is too loose. And if he starts capturing, then my bishop is quite strong. Also here I might threaten rook a7, and then the pressure is just too much. And there are lots of pieces hanging. Black can never really free himself. I can even add some more pressure if I want to, but I'm pretty sure this is completely over. So I hope you enjoy this game, those tiny maneuvers to improve a position step by step, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.